Well, grace and peace to you, my friends. Today, I am exploring Fort Anderson, which is on the other side of the Cape Fear River across from Carolina Beach. And I have never been here before. There's this big fort over here and a big trail. I'm gonna go explore. I assume I'll eventually get to the river. But I invite you now to hear this word of the Lord from Job chapter 38, verses 1 through 11. This is the beginning of God's speech in Job. Then the Lord answered Job out of the storm and said, "Who is this that darkens my counsel with words without knowledge? Brace yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Tell me if you understand. Who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know. Who stretched a measuring line across it? On what were its footings set? Or who laid its cornerstone? While the morning stars sang together and the angels shouted for joy? Who shut up the sea behind doors when it burst forth from the womb? And when I made the clouds its garment and wrapped it in thick darkness, when I fixed the limits for it and set its doors and bars in place, when I said, 'This far you may come and no farther.'" So in Job, he is rich with material, rich in family, rich in faith. And then his entire life was upended. He's lost everything. And he's angry, he's mad. And for 25 chapters, he and his three friends lament. And they try to make sense of what's going on and why is God doing this and the chaos of the world. And then he has these three friends who come to him and say, "Well, Job, maybe you did something wrong. Or maybe your kids did something wrong." And Job knew better, and then his three friends, they decide to just kind of squat there and wait for Job to die. They think, Job is clearly on God's bad side, so, he's about to perish. Not good counseling, by the way. But Job then begins to go into a long lament. And it's not like a lament in a single psalm. He goes on and on and on and on. For 25 chapters, Job speaks with his friends. And God listens. God listens. There's this kind of catchphrase right now that says, I've heard it among my colleagues, it says that love listens. Love listens. I like that. God is listening to Job for a really long time. And he sits patiently and he waits. And then God waits for his turn to speak once Job is done. Once Job gets all of that off his chest, Job doesn't just lament, he questions God. He questions God's justice. He questions the way that he ordered the universe. How can chaos reign? How can chaos do all this? Job was really angry. And then when God appears to him in a whirlwind, like a tornado. And he says to Job, "Gird your loins." Gird your loins. You can't catch that. But what it really means is prepare to battle. Or to put it in a contemporary way, it's like saying, "Come at me, bro. Come at me." When someone girded their loins, they would take their tunic or looks like a skirt, and they would sort of tuck it underneath their belt. They kind of give their legs mobility to fight. Gird your loins. If you ever get in a fight, say gird your loins, all right? So this is what God says to Job. He's basically saying to him, we're going to throw down now. And then God speaks, and it sounds kind of like God is being mean to Job. That's not really the case. Job is lamenting, and then God shows up because God knows that after all this lamenting, what Job really needs is for God to show up and to do battle with God. And God gives Job that desire that he needs, the battle with God. And so he says it's not going to be a battle of fists, it's going to be a battle of ideas. And basically the premise of everything that God was saying to Job comes down to this: you weren't there. You weren't there when I created the world. So there's all of these neat little structures here. You can tell where, not the tops of them, but like the bottoms of the foundations of them. And it's just a really I'm so glad I came here. This is a really cool place. It's a really cool day trip. I remember being in 7th grade science class, and our teacher, she rolled out this long sheet of paper that stretched across the entire classroom. And she said, this represents the entire history of the world. However old the world is, 5 billion years or whatever. And then she said, this little slither of line that I'm drawing right here at the very end of this paper, this represents the amount of time humanity has been here. She said, this should be very humbling. The earth is so much older than we are. It was humbling. It reminded me of maybe how Job was feeling when God recounted to him how he created the world, and God kept saying over and over again, you weren't there, you weren't there. God said he was like a great architect building a grand skyscraper, and he said when the ocean was created, he was like a mother kind of giving birth to that ocean, and then he used the clouds as like swaddling clothes. And then he said that ocean, though, can be chaotic, it can be hard, and so he created walls for that ocean. We call those beaches. And so you can look at the chaos, you can dip your toe into the chaos, but the chaos is there. It's not going to break forth. But then he says, I am the God who created chaos. Job, you're a victim of chaos, but chaos is necessary for us to survive in the natural world. He says that death, decay, chaos, they all have their place. We can't enjoy a beautiful summer day like this unless we endure a harsh winter. We can't enjoy and sniff beautiful flowers and look at them in the arboretum or wherever without having rainy days. They're simply just things that we have to put up with in life. Chaos is one of those. And anytime something new is created, anytime something changes and there's new creation and new birth, something else has to die and decay. That's part of how this natural world is ordered, and we are a part of that natural world. God sowed chaos into the fabric of this world, and we've got to be able to live with that, to understand that it's actually a good thing. And yes, droughts in the west and blizzards in the north and tornadoes in the Midwest, and yes, hurricanes in the south, bacteria, viruses, COVID-19. God is the God of all those things too. And those things have a place in the natural world. And that may be harsh to hear, especially if you've ever had a home with hurricane damage, or especially if you lost someone to COVID-19. These things can be hard to hear. But God says that chaos plays a role in the world. It reminds me of what Viktor Frankl said. He wrote the classic book, Man's Search for Meaning, in which he said that death and decay and chaos, they help us to appreciate life more. Many of you understand what loss is. Maybe you've lost someone in the last couple of years. Maybe you've lost something. What are you losing? What have you lost? What are you struggling with? What kind of questions do you have for God right now? What God is saying in this story is that there is a Grand Canyon-sized gap between what we know and what God knows, between what we can do and what God can do, between what we can understand and what God can understand. And we have to live to learn with some mystery. It reminds me of what Albert Einstein said. He said, if you look up in the sky at nighttime, you look at all the stars, he says it's like looking into a grand library, the biggest library in the world. But in that library, you can only read the first page of the first volume of the first book. There's so much we just don't know. God says to Job, you weren't there. We have to learn to live with mystery. Yesterday we had our annual conference. All of the Methodist churches in East North Carolina, we had our annual conference, and in that conference they had a memorial service for all the pastors who passed away in the last year. My father was one of those, and my mom and I, we were watching online and we were talking before the service. It's a really special service. And she said, I wonder if your dead is peering in. I said, I don't know. And she said, you know what? I bet he's not. I don't know what he's doing, but I bet whatever he's doing is better than this service. There's opening up to a little pier here. Let's go take a look. My mom and I have learned to live with mystery. We don't know longitude and latitude wise where my father is, but we have learned to live with mystery, and in doing so we have learned to trust God. What questions do you have? What answers are you not getting? You know, it said that Christ was asked 187 direct questions in the Gospels, and he only answered 8 of them directly. 187 questions, he only answered 8 of them directly. Does that describe your prayer life? Does that describe your conversations with God? That God doesn't always answer our questions. God doesn't answer most of our questions. But we're not called to know everything. We're called to trust God. What Job needed most in this passage was to know that God still cared. He doesn't need to know every answer of the universe. He just needed to know that God still cared and God still loved him. When God said, gird your loins, what he was really saying to Job was, I'm here for you. I love you.
Saints adore thee, casting down